This is the Voiceover Marketing Podcast, episode 27, take 2.
We're publishing this podcast on October 30th, 2014, the day before Halloween. What would we do if we didn't have an overproduced introduction for Halloween? Let's throw in a little demonic chuckle here. And another one over there. And throw in a third demonic chuckle for good measure. Mwahaha.
Yeah, I heard you the first time. Stupid voiceover.
Hey there, it's John. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I do appreciate it. Welcome to the episode. I just don't seem to be able to get this thing to work right. I had a whole introduction produced, just finished editing it last week, and the computer decided to say,
I'm tired. I'm not doing this anymore. Good night.
And I lost about 20 minutes worth of work. And I was really bummed out about that. It was at the end of the day. I'd already finished up, but I said, I want to get this episode out because I interviewed Joe Bevilacqua about 2 weeks ago. And I've had this content sitting here ready to rock and roll. And it's been an interesting couple of weeks. Last week, I had one of the most interesting experiences of my life. I was driving in town to meet with my trainer, and I was in the car at about 6:30 in the morning, and I heard one of the sister stations here, WZLX, it's a classic rock station, talk about this guy named Gallagher. And if you recall, Gallagher was a very popular comedian back in the 70s and 80s and in the 90s. And he kind of, got off the scene for a little bit. Anyway, he's still out and about touring. He's 68 years old, and he told me he's had 4 heart attacks. So that would sideline anyone for a while. Anyway, he was at the station promoting his upcoming show, and I figured, all right, well, I'm going to be with my trainer. I'm going to miss out on the opportunity to meet him. Well, I get in the car about an hour and a half later, and I'm driving, and the guy on the radio station says, this is a little awkward, but Gallagher's still here. And he pipes right in on Mike. He says, yeah, I've got nothing to do until my show tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So I was thinking, oh, cool. Maybe I'll get a chance to meet him. So I drive to the station, and I go right upstairs, and I look around for him. And the receptionist said, oh, he's outside. I walk outside, and he's out there having a cigarette. And I said, Gallagher. And he said, yeah. And I introduced myself, and we just started talking. And have you ever met somebody, and when you're talking with them, you can just see that their mind is going, they're processing and they're working. You can see the gears turning. That's probably the best way to put it. That's what I experienced with Gallagher. And so what he started asking me what I do here. And I told him I do production. And he said, do you have a microphone? I said, do I have a microphone? I have a whole studio. And he said, would you like to record some of my poems? And I'm standing there. My mouth must have been agape because I was like, yeah, of course. Because I watched Gallagher as a kid, and I thought he was a brilliant comedian. His knowledge and command of the English language, he's got that bit where he does the words and how the spelling and the pronunciations don't match up, and there are so many rules and exceptions to the rules in English. Remember that in grammar and English? They'd say I before E, except after C. And all those different rules. Well, he did a whole bit on that. Anyway, I thought he was very, very clever. So he came into my studio later that afternoon, long story short, and he recorded about 6 poems with me. I asked him if I could interview him for this podcast, and he said, yeah. So I've got that in the can. I need to go through it and edit out a few things and clean it up a little bit because I like to have this podcast rated G, and he wasn't always rated G in our conversation. So I want to clean that up, but I want to tell you that is going to be an upcoming episode of the podcast. And it's not so much about voiceover, but it's about his career and how he goes about working on projects and stuff like that. And all of those things pertain to our ability to run and market our businesses. Because as I've said before, every business needs to attract customers, provide great service, get them coming back and referring you to others. Every business needs to do that. He's no different. He needs to create a fan base. He needs to sell tickets. He needs to go and perform and get people talking about it and selling more tickets at the next venue and creating buzz, because that's how you build a career in that world. So I'm looking forward to putting that together for you. But it was a surreal experience to be sitting in a studio with someone I had admired for years, and he's sitting right there, and we're talking, and he's performing. And I wish I had captured a video of it. I thought that might have been too much to ask him if I could video him while he was performing it. But I have it all recorded. I've got it all saved. And maybe I'll even drop in one of the poems that he did, a rough cut of it, because we're going to edit that up for him a little bit too. And then he signed a T-shirt. And I'm like, well, what do I do with this now? Do you wear it? It's autographed to me. It would be kind of weird to walk around with, somebody's, I don't know, maybe it's not weird. Maybe people do that. I don't know. I'm just sitting there, kind of pinching myself saying, is this really happening? And I'm not starstruck a lot, but I'm just thinking this was such a down-to-earth thing, and this is somebody that I liked to watch when I was a kid. And this is the funny thing. He looks at me at one point, and he said, "Are you bored? Do you want to stop? Have you got enough here?" And I said, "I'm not bored." And he says, "Well, I'm just trying to give you an out. If you want to stop and you want to get done with this thing, you want to wrap it up, I'm okay with that." I looked at him and I shook my head and I said, "I don't think you understand how much of a trip this is for me." So it was a lot of fun, and he was gracious enough to take a couple of pictures with me, and everybody in the building wanted a picture with him. And other folks were like, the younger folks, they didn't know who he was. And I said, you need to understand, put him in the same category as Robin Williams was in the 70s and 80s. He was right there. And then they both took different career paths. And we talk a little bit about that and how he chose to make the decisions that he did in pursuing his career, and why he didn't pursue sitcoms, and why he didn't want to do a talk show and other things like that. So, he was pretty strategic in what he did. So that was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to bringing that to you. The podcast. As I mentioned in the last episode, we have been honored to have been nominated for a Voice Arts Award for Outstanding Voiceover Podcast. And the awards ceremony and the gala is going to be, a week from Sunday. A week from the coming Sunday after I'm recording this episode. Easy for me to say, right? Yeah, one more. Yeah. Anyway, so really excited about that. Going down to New York City. Got the ticket. Got the gala ticket. We're going to go to That's Voiceover, or I'm going to that. The lovely Ann is going to accompany me at the gala, and she will look smashing, I know. And that'll be fun. And James Earl Jones is going to be receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award. So that'll be a neat experience. Podcast continues to crank right along. As of this recording, there have been 17,771 downloads of the various odd and sundry episodes of this podcast. Thank you very, very much for listening and spreading the word about the podcast and sharing this with other people in the voiceover community. My guest today, I know I spent a lot of time talking about Gallagher, and I'm teasing that episode. It's coming next. But my guest today is none other than Joe Bevilacqua, also known as Joe Bev. And I'm not even going to start on his bio because I talk about all of his accomplishments. I don't even scratch the surface of his accomplishments because he's got such a list of talents and accomplishments and credits to his name. I don't want to talk too much about our conversation because it's really, really cool what he's done. But the reason I wanted Joe Bevilacqua to be on this podcast is he has done what I talk about a lot, in that he has created products and services that he owns using his voiceover and production and writing skills, and he is making money selling those. And in our conversation, you're going to learn how he has taken those products and services and turned those into other opportunities where people approach him to do work for them. So this is a different way of growing your business. It's one I talk about a lot. Sometimes I don't think people quite grasp what I'm talking about. Others take the ball and run with it. But I figured maybe if I get somebody else on the show who's actually done it and done it for decades, then it might make it a little bit more clear about what I'm talking about and what you can do with your voiceover business using your unique talents, your unique experiences, and your unique gifts to create products and services, to generate income, and live the lifestyle that you want to live. We are all about celebrating accomplishment here. We're not demonizing it. We're all about celebrating success. And if you make a lot of money doing your voiceover business, more power to you, because voiceover people, they're different. They have the guts to pursue their dreams and their goals, and they want to make money doing that. And so I want to provide a forum where we support all of those efforts and encourage you against a lot of stuff in our culture today that looks down upon achievement and success. And, you know, it's the conform to the norm thing. We want to do our own thing, and I think that's great. I don't know. I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent here, maybe a bit of a rant. But modern day rebels in voiceover. Yeah. Crazy, wacky people. Yeah. I've had a cup of coffee this afternoon. Maybe that's playing into it. I'm going to be quiet now. You're probably thinking, yeah, could you just get to the interview with Joe Bevilacqua? That would be great.
I'll see you on the other side of this segue music.
Well, welcome back. As I mentioned earlier in the program, my guest today is Joe Bevilacqua, also known as Joe Bev. And he's primarily known as a radio theater dramatist, but his career's taken him to stage, film, and television as a producer, director, writer, actor, and even a cartoonist. And back in 1975, Dawes Butler, the voice of Yogi Bear, dubbed himself Joe Bev's personal mentor. And since then, he's gone on to produce award-winning radio programs for National Public Radio, Sirius XM Radio, and others. And in 2012, and I think we're going to talk a lot about this stuff here, Joe, you signed an exclusive distribution deal with Blackstone Audio, where he's releasing hundreds of hours of audio documentaries, comedies, dramas, autobiographies, and more. Joe, his credits go on for a long time, more time than we have available here. But he, just real quickly, he's won a 2007 New York Festivals Award for his tribute to Joe Barbera, which aired on NPR's All Things Considered, and his NPR Weekend Edition story, A Guy Named Joe Bevilacqua, won the 2004 National Federation of Community Broadcasters Award. Joe Bev also produces and hosts, get this, 4 podcasts a week called the Jazzorama Hour, Cartoon Carnival, the Comedy-orama Hour, and the Joe Bev Experience. Joe, I could go on, but we don't have time today. How are you?
Who is this guy? I want to meet him.
Yeah, he's pretty talented dude.
Sounds like a nut.
Yeah, well, your picture will indicate that. We're going to put that up in the show notes for this episode of the podcast.
Oh, don't scare people away, man. They'll never come back. No, what it is, John, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you.
I am doing fine. As I said to you before we began, I am sitting in my beautiful woods in the middle of Napanoch, New York, where we record a lot of our audio. And I've been doing it since I was 12, and I'm 55. So that's why I'm where I am now. I stuck with it. I had lots of people telling me no. There's always going to be people telling you no. But if you know in your heart what you really have in you, and you can just let it out, unfiltered, unedited, provided you have your own internal filter. Because, by the way, everything I do, I don't want to sound prissy at all, because my work's not that way, but everything I do is clean. In the sense that I'm not going for the obvious. There's a lot of double entendre, but, it's a family kind of thing that I do. And I started when I was 12. My dad bought me a tape recorder.
Oh.
And instead of I think I performed a lot before that, too. And I did Jimmy Durante for my family and all kinds of things. But it really started when I was 12. My dad bought me this tape recorder. And by the time I was 13, I remember the summer of 1972, you had a lot of these really funny Hanna-Barbera cartoons on television where the characters were drawn like the Flintstones with rings around their mouth. And I started drawing characters of my own called Willoughby and the Professor. Then my dad gives me this tape recorder. I thought, I'll make up the soundtracks, too. And then I found 78 records in the crawl space of the attic. And I started taking these old records from the 1930s that sounded like those cartoons I was watching on TV, old rinky-tinky kind of music. And I'd play the record. And I didn't know at the time that they wrote scripts. See, I'm 12 years old, so I just started making things up. And, now they call it ad-libbing or improvising.
Yeah.
But I was improvising with music behind me and a box of sound effects in front of me and doing the sound effects live. And
you had your own Foley studio going.
And I had my own thing going. I didn't know what I was doing, really, but I was making up my own radio theater. And it started out with a professor who was just kind of mean and grumpy and his stupid assistant, And I developed them a little bit. They've changed over the years. But I started developing characters when I was 12 that I still do in some of my podcasts now. And by the way, I'll just say one side note before I finish the origin of Joe Bev's story. I am actually now doing 15 different podcasts. Whatever bio you have is old.
15? Gosh, I struggle to get one completed.
I don't know how I'm doing it, but, we do an hour of improv, but radio theater with a beginning, a middle, and an end with characters called Sergeant Lefty, and Ellis the Boatkeeper, and all these different characters. And that's on the Comedy-O-Rama Hour, which started on XM originally. And then we kept getting asked to do it, so we eventually podcasted. But then while we were podcasting that, we had a network ask us to do another show. So I had all my 78 records from when I was a kid, so I started the Jazz-O-Rama Hour. And then somebody dropped out at that same station, so they needed a show desperately. So I started doing interviews and documentary work on the Joe Bev Experience. Actually, before all of that, I got asked to do a show about animation because I know everyone in the cartoon business, so I became Cartoon Carnival, and on and on. But what happened just 7 months ago is the publisher of my books, Bear Manor Media, because I wrote the biography of Doss Butler, the voice of Yogi Bear, and some other books, asked me if I would develop a radio network for them online, both streaming and podcast, and it's become the Bear Manor Radio Network. And what I do now for them is I do 12 exclusive hours a month just for them.
Wow.
And I write these, actually my wife, Lori Kellogg, who's my partner and does half the voices on our shows, and I write these introductions to each of those shows using a guy named Fred Fries, who is the son of Paul Fries,
okay,
the marvelous voice actor who was Ludwig von Drake, and Boris Badenoff on Rocky and Bullwinkle, and the Ghost in the Haunted Mansion, and all of that.
Yeah.
So I've been writing these very much like Ludwig von Drake pieces for him to do. We call him Ludwig von whatchamacallit.
Okay.
And it's sort of this funny German character, and he introduces them. Those are radio theaters that have become so popular unto themselves, they've spun off, and we're now putting them out as a CD collection of just those interstitials. There's beautiful music and sound effects and wonderful, funny voices, and it's like an audio cartoon,
Yeah, that's great. So I want to talk to you about this whole product creation thing and the business side of it, because a lot of times what I talk about in this podcast is, a lot of folks are out there pounding away at the pay-to-play sites, and not that there isn't a place for those, but you're competing with literally thousands of other voice people for a finite number of jobs. And
you should go that route. I do.
Yeah.
I get some work that way too.
And what I'm talking about, and you talk a lot about it, and I've seen some of your posts and your website, and you've got a whole catalog, but you've created your own product, and you're using your voice talents and your production skills and your writing talents and all the talents that you've developed over time to create your own products, and you're selling them, and you're making money from that.
Right. I mean, I even draw the covers too.
There you go.
And my wife does the graphic design on them. Yes, so it's very much close to home. But then because I've been doing it for so long, and, in the beginning, no one wants to hire you, because you're an unsold commodity. But I had things from my childhood that I could bring out and say to a company, hey, listen to this, and I might get some work. So back in 1982, I had only done college radio, but suddenly I found myself producing a series called The Misadventures of Sherlock Holmes, which went all over NPR and is now, we sell it as an audio book set. And then I got asked to come up with an idea for a catalog of old-time radio programs, and they were like running out of programs because there's only so many, right?
Right.
So what I did was I came up with these old-time radio parodies, making fun of those old shows. They put them in the catalog. And then from there, I started pitching ideas to radio stations. And what I would do is I would interview people I was interested in. I'd make documentaries about subjects I was interested in. But I never actually worked for the companies officially. And by doing that, I kept my own content, see?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a freelancer in that regard. See, what happened to me was in 1981, I interviewed Count Basie at my college, Kane University.
Wow.
And before I could get it on the college station, someone erased the tape, music or something else. Because the official rule was you had to leave it on the shelf. It's the property of the station. So I made sure that anything I produced for a station was my own product that they were licensing me to do for them, and that I kept the copyright on. I think it gives a revealing side of how you start a business, really, and the idea is that if you let it, it's going to happen ad hoc. And you've got to be open to all kinds of possibilities. You've got to keep pitching ideas all the time. So Audible didn't pick up my work when I first approached them, but all of a sudden, I'm selling my own CDs on my own website.
Mm-hmm.
They see that. They ask me if they can license it. So suddenly I had like 1 or 2, 3 things on Audible. But because of that, another publisher then contacted me and said, could you do ours? And just now I was asked to do these Sherlock Holmes books in the Sherlock Holmes series of new stories as radio theater. So I'll take a lot of different kinds of work. If I'm hired to just do sound effects, I'll just do sound effects.
So how did this all start for you in terms of, I think you alluded to it a little bit a moment ago, but how did all the light bulb go off saying, aha, I've got stuff that people want to buy? And then the other question I want to ask you is, I think people get stuck with what can I create? How do you come up with the ideas?
Right, yeah, that's the flip side. There's 2 sides of the same thing. The hardest thing is knowing what you want to do in life. And there's too many people around you telling you to do something else, or what they want to do. And that's why, you go down to the bar because all the guys went down to the bar. And you're sitting there drinking, but you think to yourself, why am I sitting here drinking, wasting my time?
Right.
And I guess it's just eventually I gravitated to my bedroom, which when I was, I guess around that time, 11, 12, I moved up into the attic bedroom. So I now had my own space. I had set up my room as if it was the 1940s instead of the 1970s. And I had, an old typewriter and an old desk and a candlestick phone and all of it, an old cathedral top radio.
Nice.
And I listened to old-time radio on the local radio station that was playing it at the time at night and started to compare it to what I was doing and realizing, well, somebody paid them to do that at some point. And then Bob and Ray were on. See, the comedians Bob and Ray were on WOR from 3:30 in the afternoon to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Oh, wow.
It was mostly sketch comedy. They did parodies of Mary Hartman, but it was radio theater. And so I was exposed to this. Then I loved the Warner Brothers cartoons, and I loved the Hanna-Barbera cartoons mostly, and I still love them both. And they have the same writers, which is Mike Maltese and Warren Foster, wrote most of the Hanna-Barbera and the Warner Brothers cartoons. So I discovered that I had this talent to emulate what I heard. So I can do a lot of characters, a lot of voices. I can do all of the Mel Blanc's voices. I can do all of Doss Butler's voices. Then Doss Butler, I wrote him a letter. He wrote me back a very discouraging letter saying, forget it, you'll never get in the business. I sent him a 120-minute tape of me doing Willoughby and the Professor, and he wrote back to me. He sent me a cassette where he just critiqued my work and told me everything I needed to know about voice acting, the kernel of it,
Wow.
in 1/2 hour.
What a gift.
And telling me how it's not just voice, it's acting, it's real acting, and you have to sound like you mean it even if you're playing a bear or a tree, you know.
Yeah.
And then you use your body and the facial structure, all in one moment. So here, a man becomes my father figure, and I did an NPR piece about this as well, where my father might have been failing me in that nurturing side. I got it from Doss Butler. He became my personal mentor and guided me for many years. And I then spent every summer out in Beverly Hills living in his house.
Oh, wow.
Going to his recording sessions and attending his workshops alongside people like Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, when she was just starting out, you know.
Right.
And many of his students have worked because he built in you, he gave you this sense that if you love doing it and you had it in your gut, you don't worry about what other people think. You just pour it out joyfully and somebody will find it. They'll love it. You got to put yourself in the position where you can be seen and heard. There have been down times, and you know what I do? I get on the phone or, you know, in the old days, or more recently, email or Facebook, and I tell people, I'm out of work. I don't have any projects right now. What's going on? And God, every time somebody comes along and goes, hey, can you do this for me? Because I put myself out. Ideas, that's a whole different bag.
Yeah.
You know, how do you come up with a good idea? Well, you know, first you got to know yourself. And I've found that my best ideas come when I'm in a meditative or a quiet or a contemplative mood. So living in the woods, hiking my dogs on a hiking trail, I get inspiration because I've got some space to think, to let things just flow. I guess, you know, when I started doing it, I was just letting it pour out. And there have been periods in my life where it didn't work so well, and it was because I was doubting myself.
Oh, interesting.
I was listening to the people around me tell me, no, you're not supposed to do it that way. I had, like, for one, I was hired to do a comedy special once for Halloween for a radio station. And before I started producing it, the program director came up to me and said, whatever you do, don't be funny. And what he meant was, you're not good enough to be funny, so don't try. You know, just play some other people's comedy and just talk as yourself, you know. I didn't listen to him. I did it my own way, and I did Peter Lorre, I did Boris Karloff, and, you know, I did Bela Lugosi. And I did everything that I felt was right for the special to make it joyful. And you know what? He came back to me afterwards and told me it was an evergreen. He'd use it every year.
No, great.
So you have to listen to yourself. I spend most of my time doing the ideas that I come up with because I just enjoy, I get enthusiastic about that project, and I want to write a script, I want to tell this story or whatever it is. But because I put my own work out there, that's gotten me all this other works. And then I do other people's books, and many publishers have contacted me to do their books. And now I'm even farming out work now where other voice actors and other sort of novice audio producers are putting out some of the books I don't have time to do under my guidance.
Right.
Tell you what, it's just like anything else. It is a lifelong learning process.
That's awesome. So talk to us a little bit about what types of things you're selling, because I really want to give people some ideas about, what can I come up with? What can I create for myself?
Sure. Okay. Well, in the more traditional book side, biographies are very big. Mysteries are really big, and science fiction seems to be very big.
So are you writing the stories yourself, Joe, or are you taking other people's works and producing those?
You see, I do both.
Okay.
My work tends to lean toward, my own personal work tends to lean more toward funny. But I take a lot of mysteries, a lot of the horror and sci-fi and ghost stories and things like that as well.
Cool. What other things do? You do audiobooks and what else?
Well, I'm doing radio theater, and I actually do at least 2 hours of radio theater a week on a regular basis. The reason I do it is to keep it out there and to keep my chops. So, like, I have one of my podcasts that's on, it changes every week. It's called the Joe Bev Audio Theater. And every week I've got an hour of radio theater, sometimes a classic, sometimes something that I wrote, something that someone else wrote, but always produced, directed, and quite often voiced by me. So I put out an original radio theater series using my Willoughby and the Professor characters. We have an entire volume of them, and it's a sci-fi comedy adventure radio theater.
Interesting.
Where they travel in and out of space and meet all sorts of crazy characters, and I'm about to put out for Christmas Volume 2 of that one.
Oh, neat.
We've done children's stories.
Joe, can I ask you a question on that? So you're creating these podcast episodes, and then you're recording them and mastering them for CD, and then you're making the CD available for sale?
That's right, but we don't, at this point, I don't have to burn a CD, I don't have to print a box, I don't have to do anything. Because, as you pointed out, 2 years ago, we were able to sign a deal because we had so much stuff on Audible for download. We were able to sign a deal with Blackstone Audio, which is the largest and oldest audiobook company. They started on cassette. And they distribute all of our work so that we're not just on Audible or Amazon. We're at Walmart and Barnes & Noble, and libraries across the country are now buying the stuff. So
wow,
it's picked up tremendously. And they now trust me enough that they'll take anything I give them.
That's great.
Because it sells.
Because people are interested in everything.
Yeah, that's right. They love radio theater. There is a bigger market for radio theater than people believe. And if I can ever talk a publisher into doing their fiction book as with radio theater quality rather than just reading it, they always end up extremely happy, and the thing always sells much more than the things that we just read flat. That's generally what happens in life, is that the institution around you becomes sort of complacent. And it's up to you as an individual to spark yourself and the people around you, hopefully, because you're not going to beat the institution. The institution's always going to go, oh, that's good enough. And you're going to confuse them with any more, and they sort of talk down to everyone. It's really that they're lazy.
Right. Let me ask you a question. So you signed a deal with Blackstone Media. Not everybody's at that level yet. They don't have the catalog that you did.
There's ways like CD Baby, for example.
Okay, well, what I wanted to ask you was, before you had that deal, how did you market the content that you created? And how did you go about selling it?
Well, the first thing I did was in 1998. I created the Comedy-O-Rama website. And it was the idea of my wife, who felt that we liked these comedians so much and we were doing funny audio that we should put up tributes to different comedians and then be able to sell some of our audio. And at that time, I only had 3 CDs out that you could buy online by emailing me.
Okay.
And I would burn them myself. That was the Misadventures of Sherlock Holmes, Willoughby and the Professor, and old-time radio parodies. That was the only 3 things I had. They, had a short shelf life the first time around. That happens a lot. It's like on TV when a show is only on one season, but then it goes into reruns and it becomes a hit all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Sort of what happened to me because I'm here. It's the longevity of it. So I started the website, and I started making sales that way.
Okay.
And then I was able to show those figures to Audible, and then they took them as downloads. But they take a percentage, of course, but now it's available on their website. Then Amazon bought Audible. Suddenly the stuff's on Amazon, too. Then I got asked by a publisher to write, Bear Manor Media, to write the biography of Dawes Butler. So I did. And one of the ways I promoted it was I created a website called DawesButler.com with all sorts of rare audio of him, and we started selling rare audio with the family's permission of that.
Right.
On CD that we burned at home, and I had a stomper, a CD stomper.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. A label with it,
Yep.
I'd go to the post office with packages and mail them out. Then Bear Manor Media decided it wanted to get into audio because I was doing well with it. So they hired me to do some of their biographies of Son of Harpo Speaks. Bob Mills, one of Bob Hope's writers, wrote a book about Bob Hope and some others. So we put those out. Then ACX started.
Yes, it's from Amazon.
Audible, yeah. It's Audible's thing. So I just signed up for it, and I'm signed up for many things. And on ACX, I got one gig, and then there's a guru.com. I got another gig on there. See, so I signed up for different boards, you see, and you sort of look at the different jobs and audition for them, put your tape out. So we were having fun, and we stumbled into these situations where my true personality could come out, and I was being paid to have the fun that I like to have.
There you go.
And not just read straight. Then Blackstone took notice of it, and we ended up making the deal with them. And since then is where it just all exploded, see.
Yeah.
And the way I see it is my podcasts work both as a laboratory for content that might go into the audiobook side and really an hour-long commercial for the audiobooks.
Sure. How many titles do you have in your catalog now, Joe?
Well, we're up over 100, and there's 102, I think.
Wow.
And I think by the end of the year it'll be like 112 or 114, something like that. We have a ton coming up. I mean, I have so many books that are sitting here. We're doing Paul Lynde's biography.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We're doing the biography of the unknown comic.
Are you writing all these stories, or are the authors coming to you?
Those are all from publishers hiring us.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And this all came as a result of hearing your other work on stuff that you created for yourself and started marketing, and then they all come to you and say, hey, we like what you did. Can you do this for us?
Exactly. So if you want to do it, you can, if you have the talent and the willingness, the patience to learn it properly, and to not just listen to the norm of what's out there, because that's usually sort of been dumbed down a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
You got to kind of look inside yourself and go, what do I like? What would I like to hear?
That's very interesting that you say that, because I'm trying to explain this for everybody listening, because not everybody's maybe interested in doing biographies or something like that. But what I want to do is get people's minds thinking and juices flowing about, well, maybe I'm interested in growing apple trees.
Whatever. You could put out a whole series of how-to on many subjects, believe me. And I have two chefs now that host two of my podcasts because they're giving their sort of healthy living tips to the audience, and they're building a following who then buys their books and their audio and their video.
I guess the people, what they really want to know is, okay, so how do I make money with this thing? I can't sign a thing with Blackstone, yet. What ideas do you have for people?
The first one is to tell anybody you can your idea. And see if it bounces off people and how it sounds to them and all that. Post your ideas on Facebook, and say, I'm thinking of getting into the audiobook thing. What do you guys like to listen to? And kind of get a feel for the thing. But then what you need to do is really just sit down and think about what it is you like and what do you have to say about it. And it may be interviewing someone else.
Right.
We did an entire 1-hour program that aired on NPR about 10 years ago. Because when we first moved to this little nowhere land that we're in, we found all these wonderful people living this healthy lifestyle and all kinds of stuff. So we did a whole show called Healthy Living in the Catskills. It was picked up by lots of NPR stations. I'm also a member of something called the Public Radio Exchange, which is a place where you can put your audio and public radio stations will pay you for it.
Oh, wow.
You got to do something, even if you're not paid right away. And let's face it, audio's actually cheap. Talent's not, That's the hard part, really.
Right.
Because the technology's available, and anyone can even download a free audio editing program,
right,
like Audacity,
yep,
and they could make their own podcast. But what I find when I'm training some of the people that just are starting out and want to do it, is they don't actually realize how complicated it is to do it correctly.
Right.
That you're not just turning on the mic and going, hey, hi, ho, and you don't really have it, you're not prepared, and you don't know what you're saying. You got to have something to talk about, or you got to have an interesting guest, and you have to do all this knowing that you might not get paid the first time, or even the second time. And podcasts are unless you are getting up into the 20,000 or more subscribers, you're really not going to be able to sell ads.
Right.
But when you first start out, you've got to just do it. You got to put the thing up every week, have a website for it, have a Facebook page for it, tell your friends, Facebook about it, blog about it, tell everybody you can tell, and then sort of encourage return visits to the podcast by, in my case, it's an enticement of what's going to happen next.
Right.
I have characters that are reoccurring, for example, in my Camp Waterlog segments on the Comedy Alarm Hour, so that it becomes a comic soap opera, so that it ends on a cliffhanger. Then your choices are starting from the bottom, like I did, and selling. You sign up with CD Baby or one of these other services that take a percentage, and you then have a page, and people go and they buy your stuff, and you can even have an Amazon page connected to it and all that. So you have your little storefront, and that's a good way to start out. The second way is to team up with somebody like myself, because I'm always looking for new content. And I do a 50-50 split.
There you go.
Which nobody does for me. But on my end, 50-50.
Well, there's, people might balk at the idea of paying people a good amount of money. And I've done projects with people where I pay referral fees, and that's really what you're looking at. But
exactly.
you got to think about it, that they're bringing the people to the dance. The customer base.
Right. Same thing as you need a plumber. You don't want to do it yourself, so you have to pay them.
Right. But I mean, you've also gone out and developed a customer base. You've got a lead list. You've got people who are responsive to the type of content that you provide, and that's taken you time to develop, and that's something of value to a potential partner with you that says, hey, you know what? 50% of something's better than zip of nothing.
Right, and I
or
find
100% of nothing.
Yeah, that's right. I find that I run into both types of people, and some of them walk away.
Yeah.
They want, I don't know, all of it, I guess. I don't know what they think I'm here for, just doing it for free, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that I'm actually doing more work than, first of all, they see or imagine. And second, that I'm trying to do it really, really well. I'm working really hard. I'm not just flubbing it,
Yeah.
And I see some people around me that do flub it, and eventually it comes back to bite them.
I'm curious. You're doing 15 podcasts. You're making all these productions. Paint a picture of a day in the life of Joe Bev.
Well, right now, believe it or not, and this isn't the first time I've said this, but I have prostate cancer. I have first-stage prostate cancer, and it's practically nothing, but I'm in radiation right now.
Oh, okay. Well, good luck.
I get up. Thank you. I get up about 6:30. I leave the house at 7:30. A cab picks me up and drives me to my radiation therapy, which is an hour away, and because I live in the woods. And then he waits for me while I have the treatment, and I get home about 10 o'clock. At which point, generally, at this point, my wife and I get on our stationary bikes for about an hour, and we watch whatever TV show most people watch at night when they're sitting on the couch.
Okay.
And we lift some light weights. And then we eat breakfast, and then she goes to her desk, I go to mine. I have my own little office, and she has hers set up in the living room. And she starts looking at the casting lists and the various job postings that might be out there for us, and tries to find us more work, as if we don't have enough. But you never, these are all short-term projects.
Fill the funnel.
While you're working, you're looking for work. And so then I go in and, after I read my email and check Facebook real fast, I open up Audition, and I basically just, whatever I'm working on, I chip away at it. And if it means that we have to put the dogs outside for a while and we're going to go and stand in the closet to record something, we do it. And then I sit there all day long and I just chip away and edit and edit and edit. In between, I do a lot of marketing and promoting, like writing press releases, putting them out on PR Log, blogging, putting things on the Facebook pages to let people know the podcasts are there and how to get them and what the latest content is, and on, doing all that. And in between, I take about 4 breaks somewhere in there and eat something in between and hike my dogs a little bit. And some days I'm done by 5, some days by 6. Very rarely now do I try to work any later than that because I find it comes back to bite me later.
Right.
I used to pull all-nighters, but then I found I was a waste the next day and not productive as I should be. So I cut it off at like 6 the latest. And we do other things, We chill out, play with the dogs, listen to music, watch some TV, whatever it is.
Right.
And relax.
Joe, I got to watch the clock here, but for anybody who's thinking about creating their own products that they could sell and market, and they just don't know where to get started, what would be the first thing you'd recommend they do?
Yeah. Well, I can only speak from the perspective of audio because that's where I've been able to make my mark, and I think it's partly because it's inexpensive to make. And so first, ask yourself if it's economically feasible. And then I say take a pad and write down ideas. Make a journal. I don't have to do it anymore because my brain is trained to come up with ideas. But the best way that I found when I was younger to come up with a good idea was to write that idea down and to put it in a little journal. And every day you just write something in there that I have an idea about this product would be good or that one. And then investigate how do you make it happen. Ask people.
What do you say to the concern people might have of like, well, I don't want anybody to steal my idea?
Oh, I know. Well, there's different ways to look at life,
Yeah.
If the person has more talent than you, then they deserve to steal it, Because an idea, to me, the idea is, like the seed is to the watermelon, It's only the beginning, and anybody can come up with a good idea, but the hard thing is to implement it, to have the perseverance, to have the talent, to have the patience, because everything you do in life that's going to have a good outcome actually is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. But there's so many subtleties to voice acting. That's the first 2 steps, Figure out if it's something that you can afford to do. Come up with an idea that's not fantasy. A lot of people come up with all kinds of ideas, but they're not something that they could do unless they won the lottery. So you've got to have modest, ambitions at first, and find something you love doing. In my case, it's audio. And somebody else may have a different talent. But because of the internet and because of the ease at which you can network now, I think it's an open playing field for anyone who wants to work hard and persevere. Keep trying that. If they think that idea is a good idea, keep trying to make it happen, You don't have to give away your idea either, really, 100%. What you're doing is, I think, going to people who really don't need your idea and asking their advice is always a good way.
Interesting.
That's why Doss Butler was so important in my life, and other drama teachers and other professors in my university, because I listened and I paid attention to what other people were doing and saying, and people that might have known more than me, That's me, I'm just very alert, very attentive, and always willing to learn and try something new and not be afraid to have it fail. What do you got to lose, except your time? Get some of your friends together and record something together even. Some of the things that have been successful have come from the strangest sources of, people that just got together and wanted to do a spoof of crime drama, and they came up with this really great series of podcasts called Streets of Staccato, like a funny comedy crime drama. We just put it on our podcast first, and it got such good response that we decided to put them out as CD sets, and they sold,
That's great. So, Joe, if anybody wants to check out your catalog and all the different products and services that you offer, how do you get there?
It's Waterlog, water, the first word water, second is log, and it's with 2 G's, so it's waterlog.com. They can also go to joebev.com. They can go to dossbutler.com. They can just look up my name if they can spell it on the internet. They can email me directly at joebev@joebev.com.
Excellent.
And on the website, we've got ways to hear all 15 podcasts on all of the websites. And we've got samples of all of the audiobooks up there for people to listen to as well. And there's ways to buy them. And we even have an app. We now have a smartphone app that you can hear all 15 podcasts on.
Oh, cool. Well, Joe, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad we talked, and I hope that it helps other people to be brave, as well as have the fortitude to stick it out. So that's where it comes. It comes after you stick it out, after you've had failures and 30 people told you no, that 31st person is going to say yes.
I totally agree with that. I think you've given us a lot of things to think about, a lot of neat ideas. And again, don't necessarily have to travel the same path that Joe's taken.
No, everybody finds their own.
Yeah, but
those opportunities.
Exactly. So the world wants your content and your ideas, so go create them.
It does.
Well, Joe, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, pal.
Our program originates in the Boston studios. We hope you'll join us again. Until then, we bid you au revoir, keep your chin up, and the best of luck.
Well, that's it for this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com so you'll get notices of new episodes, and please share it with your friends and colleagues in the voiceover world. Also, it would be a huge help if you'd like this podcast and rate it on iTunes to help keep it near the top of the list. Feel free to share your comments and questions about this episode and future topics you'd like discussed at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. And if you'd like more information on one-on-one coaching with me and mastermind group opportunities where we focus on growing your business, feel free to drop me a line at my cyber assistant's email address at mike@johnmelly.com. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and share your voice with the world.